Hey everyone, Chris Stegall here with MK Partners, joined today by Matt Kaufman. Hey Matt, welcome.
Thank you. It's good to see you again, Chris.
Yep. And it is officially October, so officially Q3, spooky season, and maybe most excitingly, a Hacktoberfest.
Yeah, one of
So
my
this
favorite times of
is,
the year.
yeah, the magical time of year where everybody learns about or contributes to open source projects. I know I had a understanding of what open source meant and was, but it always kind of seemed a little bit too out of my scope, above my pay grade. And Hacktoberfest was my introduction to contributing to open source projects. So a near and dear piece of my heart there.
Yeah, and I think almost all of us are in that same boat. We've heard of open source software. We kind of get it, but how do you start? How do you get involved? And there's a lot of imposter syndrome. Who am I to try to fix something that these other people have built that know what they're doing? But just like we kind of experience in any workplace, when you have more eyes on a project, people will point out, oh, you got a typo here. It can be really that simple. Or, like I noticed that you did the same thing twice for some reason. Like, how did that happen? And developers, we often will like kind of look over another shoulder and just kind of be there almost. They call it rubbernecking. And it's this weird effect that by having someone else there, and often you explain to that person, you solve the problem. You figure it out right away.
Yeah.
It's like, imagine you were looking for your keys in your house and your significant other roommate's like, well, let's find it. Let's find it together, right? You would go with that person. Okay, well, I came home and I walked over here and I put my keys down, and then you're like, oh, there they are. And that's often what it is when we're writing code or even documentation, just having that kind of extra moment where you're not doing the same thing. You've stepped away and you've come back and you're almost seeing it from a different perspective, where you have that person with you who has the different perspective. It solves the problem.
Yeah. So. And I think you kind of segued into something that I discovered during my first Hacktoberfest, is that, I can say, oh, who am I? I don't have the coding background to hop in and do some programming. But it's not that every project needs programming. There are some really good programmers out there who need help writing documentation that's understandable, because they're so deep into the how it works that they've, struggled to communicate what the user needs to do, because from their perspective, just use it.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like, I don't know, like making a movie or something, where there's like, no matter what your background is, you probably have a specialization that is valuable to somebody's project. And so you don't need to like rule yourself out, because there's probably somebody that is looking for graphic design or documentation writing or spell checking, or somebody to rubberneck or explain the code to, somebody to add comments to their code.
Right.
People are not always the best at doing that. So lots of ways to contribute.
And in general, open source software is being built for the world to use, right? It's not just for the person who wrote it to use. And so if you just take a step back and think about it, well, then you want to make sure that the world can understand what this software is and look at it and be like, oh, I see what's going on there. And a great way to kind of do that litmus check is to have someone who isn't the person who wrote the code take a look. They don't necessarily need to understand the inner workings. But if you say, okay, here is a method that we expose and you're allowed to call, some type of function or something like that. Well, let's make sure that it makes sense. What's the name of it? If the name of the function is do secret thing, well, like we don't really know what it does. If your variable names are just A, B, and C, it becomes really hard to use. And so having someone else come in and take a look and even provide just that feedback makes it a lot easier. And then most of these projects, you're not just expected to come in there and be like, okay, read over this whole code base and find any problems that may exist. There's usually a list of existing issues, and many of those issues are actually flagged as being, hey, this is a good first issue for somebody who'd like to contribute. So they're kind of almost spoon feeding you. There are things that need to get fixed. I can fix it, but I actually am working on this really hard stuff. So if anybody who is new wants to fix it instead, we'd appreciate it. And then most importantly, you never are actually touching the real code that is used by the whole world. You're putting like almost like a help ticket in there saying, hey, I think I have fixed this. Please take a look, and if it is correct, approve it so that it can then be used as part of the real package or the code base. So knowing that it's like, a very safe environment. So, our Salesforce viewers, it's essentially like spinning up your own dev org or sandbox or even scratch org and fixing it there, and then doing a change set that's going to get reviewed by the lead programmer, that type of thing. So it's a very safe thing. Hacktoberfest is 1 month. Ideally, you learn about this type of stuff. You get involved in October, and you continue to do it throughout the year. So my guess is most of the contributions in October are probably not going to be like the amazing rocket science stuff that revolutionizes the world, but it's baby pieces that over time will help make other people's lives easier.
Yeah. And if it's your first time using GitHub, it can really demystify what can be a scary interface and process if it's just a lot of new vocabulary to learn and push and pull. And like you said, you got to get over that fear that you're going to break something, because it's really designed so that you can't. And won't.
Yeah. If it breaks something, somebody else made a mistake, right? Technically your change is what broke it, but really somebody else made the mistake of not reviewing it, not testing it, and so on and so forth. So it's unlikely. And I'll admit, I've had pull requests rejected before, even during Hacktoberfest. And that's okay. That's part of the process. There's not always a right answer. There's sometimes multiple right answers, and the person who's in charge may say, you know what, that is the right answer. I don't really like it though. I prefer if you did it differently. And they could either provide that feedback, or if they're being flooded with change requests during October, which is often the case, they might have just selected somebody else's, and so they didn't need yours.
Yeah. Cool. Well, I think we can hop in today. Okay. This year is the 10th year of Hacktoberfest.
Yeah.
Where do you think is a good place to start? Do you want me to share your screen or share mine?
Yeah. Go ahead and share my screen. And I think this year, successful participants actually have a tree planted in their name or their GitHub handle, probably not their actual name. I'm not sure. In the past, there have been swag like stickers and shirts and stuff like that. It's possible that still may be a thing this year, but I think they're advertising that the first successful participants will get a tree planted in their name, which is honestly just as good. I got so many stickers and shirts anyway. So you start by going to hacktoberfest.com. And if you don't already have a GitHub handle, you'll need to register for one. If you have one, you can just log in directly with GitHub. And I've already done that here. So you can see it's slightly different than if you just go to the website on its own. But they've got a cool looking site. You can see it's very retro this year, which is cool. And it just tells you more about Hacktoberfest. And this is kind of what we've just been talking about, how, it's open to the world. Everyone can help out. And we're only fixing or contributing to open source software. So we're not contributing to software that is, private and being used by some evil corporation somewhere to, hack into people's phones. This is all very open source software. It tends to be small, useful tools, and not even like, it's an entire banking platform. It's usually simple stuff that's easier to understand and get involved with. And the topics really range from anything you can think of. If it's out there on GitHub or GitLab, and it's an open source project and it has Hacktoberfest in the topic, you basically can just start contributing. Only people who want contributions put Hacktoberfest as a topic on their repo. So it's pretty safe. No one's going to get mad at you for trying. Here it is. You can see the first 50,000 will have a tree planted in their name through this nonprofit Tree Nation. So that's great. And then there's some unique digital reward, I guess, for if anyone who has 4 pull requests, which is usually the requirement for Hacktoberfest is to have 4 pull requests or merge requests, what we usually call PRs, approved and accepted during the month of October. You still can keep going after the month of October, obviously. These projects are out there year round. They're not just public during October, they're public all the time. but you get something digital. I don't know what it's going to be like. I said in the past, it's been like stickers or T-shirts. I think most people participating probably have a lot of stickers and T-shirts, so we don't really need them. But it could be some type of credit maybe towards one of the sponsors. So one of the longtime sponsors of Hacktoberfest is DigitalOcean. They have other sponsors as well, but at this point, I would actually rather get a credit towards using some type of online service than another sticker or shirt for that matter. So hopefully it's something like that, fingers crossed. And so then it just kind of talks about, okay, well, you can learn all about open source, how to contribute, how to use Git, which is important, and GitHub as well. And so there's a lot of knowledge here that you can learn. My first contributions during Hacktoberfest were to GitHub repositories that were just text. There was no code, but it was like wikis and how-tos and stuff like that. And that was very easy to do, right? Like I read and write English, and I am decent at reading and writing and know grammar and things like that. And I just went through and I started looking for typos. And most of them got approved. There were a couple that actually got rejected. They're like, yeah, we don't care. Like, that's not a big enough change is basically what they said. Like I added like an apostrophe to a word that needed apostrophe S. And they're like, yeah, that's not in the spirit of what we're trying to do here. Too easy. But for most of them, I try to clarify on things, or there are a couple of things where it said like TBD, and I was like, oh, I can fill in a TBD, Yeah. And so I did that type of stuff. This year, you can see they've actually got a list of websites that are listing various projects, and so we can let's go to this one here first. And so it's a list of projects that have Hacktoberfest in the topic. Free Code Camp is a great one. This is like, again, I think probably where I first contributed. But these types of projects, a lot of it is text, and then there's often some starter code. And so you can come here and let's just go to issues, or we go to Free Code Camp, and we'll see. There's 196 issues. And so we can come here and look at some of these issues. And 196 is a good number. And these are issues that are reported by people like you and me also. Sometimes they're reported by people who work on the project, but really anyone could say, hey, I've been looking at your repository and I noticed this problem. And so we can look and see. So like some of these might be this one here, misleading instructions, step 43. Great first item, right? If you can go through this code lab and follow the instructions, and then you see, oh yeah, step 43 is wrong. It happens. The internet changes. All sorts of dependencies change. And so the name of a button may be changed in the instructions, or maybe they're out of order. If you can figure that out, I'll see if we can load this, then you'll be able to do a pull request and fix it, which hopefully will get approved. And then it'll actually become part of their real repository that potentially millions of people might interact with. So this person's done an amazing job of documenting the issue here, right? So describe the issue. Seems like they have a template that's used, and that's common. So this says that the directions imply that there will be 3 spans that weren't interconnected for alignment. So they have some instructions on how to do a code lab is what I'm gathering here. And so this person assumed that the correct solution would be something like this. But apparently the solution they're looking for is actually more like this. And so they're basically saying, well, you probably should update the instructions then. So I expect the instructions to clarify that the span for total fat is supposed to be nested, designer span, et cetera, et cetera. And it's like, okay, well, this is great. You can see this person said, can you assign this to me? And then they actually have a guide for how to contribute. So a more, widely used project that has like a group of people behind it will often have a guide on how you can contribute, which this one does. So before you just go and fix it, you really should then go to their contribute page and read, how do I contribute to freecodecamp.org? And that way your contribution, your request to make a change is less likely to be rejected. And everyone's going to have possibly different guides on how to contribute. So it's something you'd want to do. Let's just go back and we can look at some of these other ones here.
It's also probably a good chance to point out that you can participate on the other side if you have a project that you want people to contribute to. you can join Hacktoberfest as a maintainer. And then on the Hacktoberfest site, they do have, of course, their instructions for maintainers and some recommendations, one of which being add some contribution guidelines to your repository, like Free Code Lab did. And that way, you're not overwhelmed by people saying, can you assign this to me? And
right.
I fixed something you didn't want fixed and all of that.
Yeah. And if you have a project that you've been playing with that isn't open source yet, but you'd be open to making open source, assuming that you're going to keep it that way, now's a great month to do it. People are looking for things to contribute to. And I mean, this is how sometimes, big things get built, right? So you have a little idea, it's kind of cool. And if you can get other people who are passionate about the same concept to participate, you could actually build something that's really useful. And depending on the licensing for open source software, there are ways to make money. So it's not that it's always a volunteer project. Often there's an open source library that then is used inside something that's for profit if the licensing allows it. And so there's a lot of different types of licenses out there, and that's something else you could look at if you want. So it's kind of neat. I mean, you can essentially make friends around the world who are interested in the same problems and they want to solve them. And you can work collaboratively with these people. And often, because it's not your day job that you're being paid to do, you actually are more passionate about it because you picked it. It's something that's meaningful to you. It's a problem you're trying to solve. And every year, I think there's more and more open software out there. There's also more and more open data sets out there. And so a lot of government entities have open data. And so you're able to then build tools that work with that open data and maybe discover something that the government didn't know and no one else knew. So there's a lot of cool stuff you can do. I'm going to go ahead and click on some of these other links. So I think some of these I already clicked on earlier. So here's this firstissue.dev. And so here we can see this is a curated list of open source projects and the issues that they're having. These are probably going to be a little more advanced than some of the ones that are just text. If you're a programmer and you're looking for some projects, this might be a way to do that. Here's another one up for grabs, and this is similar to this one lets you filter by stuff. So I'm a JavaScript programmer, so I could come here and look for things that are related to JavaScript. I like this idea that I could come in here and maybe find something that I can help with. This one looks awesome. A public happiness movement. That's really cool. I'm going to click on this one because it looks very interesting. So this looks like a website. And they're just trying to make the world a better place. But they have different little projects, I guess, that you can contribute to. Very cool. So this is like what I was saying, often you can find people with similar interests and work on the project with them, even though you could be around the world. Here's another one I was looking at earlier. Docs GPT sounded really cool also. That was on the list. And if we look at the issues, you can see there's bugs reported here, and some things that look pretty simple. They actually say good first issue, help wanted, JavaScript. So for me, I'm like, oh, well, I might be able to do that. So we would take a look at it and see, can I do this? Oh, yeah, this one actually I looked at earlier. It really actually is something I think conceptually we all can understand. So the issue is they're expecting a placeholder in this to say, type your message here. But actually, there's no placeholder. I think most developers could figure this out, minutes. We could probably do it on this call. But even a non-developer could figure this out, right? And I'm debating, I'm like, oh, do we have time to do this one? I kind of want to. Yeah. We can always edit it if we go long, right? And maybe we don't actually go through the whole process of submitting the PR, but we could try. So this person responded only 5 hours ago. So actually, I may have lost out. A bunch of people are looking at us 3 hours ago. I'd like to contribute. So people are volunteering to contribute to this. I don't want to steal their thunder if they're working on it. So it's already assigned to Quantum, it looks like. What I think we could do is kind of walk through it, but we won't actually do the PR. Okay, so we're going to need to figure out where is this type your message here in their code base, right? Where is this input? They said that to find it in the real world, if we were to look at the website, it's somewhere on here, on this screen. My guess is you have to be signed in. Let's go back and maybe we can find it. So we know it's an input. We know it that on that same screen, it says this is a chatbot. Although these two are different too. That's interesting. So there might be a couple issues here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go to this code here and I'm going to actually fork this repo. So what forking a repo does is it basically makes an additional copy of the repo for you. And it's now in your GitHub as opposed to their GitHub. This will allow me to make changes without having to worry about doing a PR or anything like that. You don't have to do that. You could also just click here and get it this way. And so we can get the GitHub URL like this. I guess we could do that too if I'm not going to really go through the whole thing. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy this URL. And then now there's different code editors that are out there. Technically, GitHub itself is a code editor. I can come to one of these things and hit the pencil and actually edit it, right? And they have a rule in place saying, hey, you can't edit this directly. You have to fork it. So let's go ahead and do the fork. So let me fork this real quick. And I don't want to do that real quick. Let me see. Did I fork it already or did it just fork that one file? No. Okay, so we're going to do this, and I'm going to choose me. Oh, it does already exist. Oh, perfect. It did fork it. Okay. All right. So this, you'll notice, is now my docs GPT. Before, we were in their docs GPT. So I forked it, and I have essentially just copied this folder from their GitHub to my GitHub. That's all we've really done here. And then what I can do is take this code and I take the URL from here. Now, like I said, there's multiple code editors. Normally I use VS Code, but since we're in the browser and we're talking about Hacktoberfest, you don't have to use a code editor. Like I said, you can use the pencil down below. So I can come here and click on, well, this contributing.md, right? I could actually make changes to this here if I wanted to. And I could say, no, we don't, which would be a terrible change, right? But it's that easy to make a change. You can just come in here and edit. This is an editor in itself. It's a text editor. I'm going to undo that because I don't want to do that. That would be a bad thing to do. But here's their contributing guide, right? And so we can see that. But it's that easy to make a change when I cancel this out. Issues and pull requests, et cetera, et cetera. So you don't need a code editor to begin with. Now, if you do feel like, well, I need more than just this in-screen editor that's built into GitHub, vscode.dev is a website that runs VS Code in the browser. You can see here. And one of the things you can do in it is create a new, basically, like code browser for a repository. In this case, I've already opened up a repository. Let's see if I can figure out how to open a new one. I think I can just do this. Here we go. Okay. So this is what vscode.dev looks like when you first go there. And this is almost the exact same as VS Code, the software that a lot of developers use when they're writing code. It's missing some features, but every year it gets a little better. There's other code editors too. You don't have to use this. There's Eclipse, there's Sublime, there's probably like a dozen of them. And so somewhat personal preference, somewhat based on the tools that you need to work with. Sometimes tools are IDE specific or code editor specific. But one of the cool things you can do is say open remote repository. And I'm going to say open a repository from GitHub. And I'm going to just paste this in there and hit enter. And hopefully it'll work. Maybe not. Let me go back and paste this in there. There we go. Okay. And so what it's doing right now is in the browser, it's opening up that folder that was in my GitHub. And here we can see this set of files here on the left-hand side. It matches the files over here inside GitHub. So it's opening up that folder. And now I can do my editing from here in more of a code editing environment. And there are some really cool features of VS Code and other coding tools that are not available in just a notepad, right? So for instance, let's say, I don't know, I'm trying to think, we wanted to start capitalizing the letter A every single time it's in use. Well, what I'm doing right now is basically finding all of them. There's actually a couple different commands we can use to do that. Well, that was kind of silly. What if I want to say, well, actually, I want space A, and I'm going to capitalize that every time, right? And now I can come in here and say the instead of A, right? I know it's a silly example, but even though this is a code editor, it's really like a text editor on steroids. It has so many cool features built into it. You can do a lot of find and replace using regular expressions and things like that make it easy to fix things and edit things in bulk. So this is just the README for that project, the GitHub, the docs GPT that we were looking at earlier. I'm going to come back and actually find that issue. We'll go back to the original. Here's the issue. And again, we won't actually do it because by the time you watch this anyway, someone probably fixed it. But we're looking for an input and it does not have a placeholder. And it sounds like it's on the main page. So it should be that hard to find. Now, I don't know this project. So this is literally the same process that you will go through when you are contributing to someone's project that you're unfamiliar with. I don't know it. So I just have to guess, okay, where could this be? Now I know a little about code, so I'm like, okay, well, maybe, no, that's a CSS file, sorry. TSX, no. I could look for the word input, so I could come here and do find. And if I go back to the issue, ideally it would have said, hey, here's the file that needs to be fixed, but that issue could have been logged by anyone, a non-programmer even. Let me close some of these windows. So whoever logged this issue may not be a programmer. They didn't know which file it actually has in it. And so it doesn't say this is the file that needs to be fixed. It's up to the contributor to find it. And so we're looking for some type of input. And that input doesn't have that placeholder text. Here's some inputs, but I don't think it's this one. This is an upload input. And unfortunately, the screenshot doesn't show enough of it. So this is good though. Okay, so I want to see something that says this is a chatbot, right? That's a good clue. So I'm going to look for this is a chatbot. Oh, look at that. And we found something. And there is an input here. And my guess is maybe it's one of these inputs. It could be this one here. I think it is. I think it's this one here. Because I don't see any other inputs on this page. I don't think I'm just going to scroll up to the top. Sorry about the scrolling. But we're going to see what's going on here. We're looking for ideally something that says input. So in this case, it's not HTML. This is JavaScript JavaScript that's going to, TypeScript that's going to be kind of controlling what happens on the screen. And here's a button. And there's an arrow down image. Well, I see this arrow here. That's an arrow, but that's not arrow down. That's arrow to the right.
I feel like that's almost like the paper airplane send a message.
Yeah. Now there's this one here. This might be a conversation bubble. This could be it. Ideally, I would be going to the page. So we could try this one more time. It wants me to log in. Oh, actually, let me open it in a separate tab real quick. It wants me to log in. I've never used this website. It sounds great. I don't know if I want to sign up or sign in just so I can fix their issues. All right, you got me. I don't want them to see my personal data. Let me try it one more time. Maybe I can just sign up with an email address, and I will let all of our viewers see my email address. It's not a secret. All right, so while this sends me a code to log in, It'll be much easier if I can actually see what's going on the page and not just go off of the report. Unfortunately, I am not getting a verification code. So this could be difficult and awkward. Let me check spam as well.
Maybe it is an issue.
Oh, I found it. It went to spam. It went to spam. I got it. Okay. All right. Okay. So now I am, and look at this. Here it is. Okay, great. So now that I'm here, I can do something like this and maybe tell a little more about this page. So what I'm doing is I'm opening up the dev console in Chrome, and I'm going to see, can I figure out something more about this? And this is basically showing me the HTML behind the page. And so I see there's a div here as full flex. I see this cursor pointer, and that's a div as well. And what I can essentially do if I were like working without recording my screen right now, I would do a side by side and try to figure it out. We can see here that it's right above this is a chatbot though. So if it's right above this is a chatbot, that's here. Here's the div, and we can start to now see stuff that might match up. So class name ML hyphen, and that's an image. Let's come back to here and see if we can find that class name ML hyphen, and it was an image right there. Okay, look at that. So that's the little arrow. Above the arrow is a div. Above that div is something called content editable equals true, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Okay. So above that image was a div. And now we're looking for this content editable. I'm pretty sure it's this thing here, content editable. Okay, so we found it. So this div here is what we're looking for. Now, if I was going to be a developer on this video, I would actually be running this locally. And that way I can make changes and see it being fixed. And that would be much better than blindly making a PR. And so now the question becomes, can you even have a placeholder in a div? Placeholder is this concept that typically refers to inputs. And what they're doing in this case on the website is they're making this div behave like an input, when in reality it's not. But what we can do, just to kind of test this out, is I'm going to go ahead and type in placeholder equals hello, Matt, and see what happens. So nothing happens. And that makes sense because, honestly, placeholders don't apply to divs. What probably needs to happen, and it's going to be a lot of work, is it actually has a value, except for it's not going to be a value because, again, this is not an input. So let me edit this as HTML real quick. There we go. And I'll just clear that out. Okay, it says hello, Matt. And then what we would do is on click, we would take it away. And that is a pattern that definitely is out there already. And we can search for that right now and find the code that needs to exist. So if we open up a new tab and we're going to say div placeholder remove on click, and this is just my guess. Here you go. So you can see in Stack Overflow, people have done this type of thing before, except for this is input. We want it for a div. And what I might have to do is a search here with this one looks a little better. No, I think this is the same one. Did I just go to the same one? I think I did. So we can find someone else who has solved this problem. We don't have to necessarily solve it ourselves and write code from scratch. In this case, they're using jQuery, so I probably wouldn't use that because I don't think this nope, that's jQuery also. Don't use the placeholder attribute. Oh, that's an interesting idea. Okay. So this is just saying that the pros and cons of this and things like that. And I guess it may not work for all browsers. And so they're saying there's a better way to do it, which is exactly what we're looking for. A floating label effect. Interesting. So floating label effect, look at that there. and they talk about why they do it this way. Now let's see if they actually show us how to do it, because that's what we're looking for. Move the placeholder content above the input, but below the label. Oh, they're saying don't even do it there, because it's actually better from an accessibility perspective, and it won't look pre-filled in. So it could be that the issue itself is one that we want to argue with and say, well, I have a better way to solve it and solve it that way. Yeah. It's not a bad idea. So you can see here, here's their example. Oh, so they put sample. So we could try that out. If we come here and we look at this here, we could come back and say, I'm trying to think, where would we actually put this? And HTML, and let's put it right there. Yeah, so yeah, it doesn't look good. I'm sure that's not what they wanted. But we would kind of try out different stuff until we find what we want, and then we would go and make the change. So I'm going to delete that one. Let's do that one more time. And so what I'm doing right now is just editing in the browser, although I'm not doing it well. There we go, edit as HTML. And this is just a way to test it out. Again, normally I would probably run this code locally, and that way I can make changes more reliably. But for the sake of a recording, this works really well. Okay, so on click, we want that to go away. We can come back here and we can kind of see they actually have an on key down already. Now this is going to be harder for me to edit in the browser, but we would probably have to add something in here that says, you know, if, and then I'll probably just do pseudocode. So if current value is equal to the placeholder value, then remove / hide the placeholder. Something like that. And so we would do something that basically on the first click, it would go ahead and make that placeholder go away. And the placeholder would be right here. And so we would make that go away. And so that would be an easy way to do it. Because again, they're not using an input. So this one might be a little more complicated than the typical one that you would start with. But you know, conceptually, this is the way to do it. You use some type of code editor, whether it's software installed or GitHub or VSCode.dev or anything like that. It's totally up to you. There's not a right or wrong. And then you can make a change and save that change to your own repository. Once the change saves to your own repository, then you can do a pull request to the main one and say, hey, I fixed issue 1, 2, 3, 4. You want to approve it for me? You know? And what's neat about Hacktoberfest is they're monitoring that. So they're monitoring all the repositories that have Hacktoberfest in them as a topic and all the pull requests for those repositories throughout the month of October. So it's a lot of data that they're monitoring. And because these projects are open source, they're public projects, so they're able to monitor that. You can't monitor private projects. And that's how they're keeping track of who gets credit for what. So I've kind of queued up something that we can actually edit together. And also at the same time advertise, hey, you could edit this too. So this is a repository that's much simpler. It's called Chromebook Setup. And what this is a series of scripts that we use when we get a new Chromebook and we want to set it up, specifically for development with Salesforce. Although sometimes we do development for other stuff too, but specifically for development in Salesforce. So it definitely applies. And what's really cool, it's also not just for developers or coders, it's also for administrators. So one of the great things about Salesforce as a platform is that it's web-based. And that means you don't need an expensive computer to work on Salesforce. I right now am on a Chromebook and I do everything on a Chromebook. And so this is the script that I run and other employees run when we get a new Chromebook. And I've actually shared this with people who we don't work with who also want to do development on Chrome. And so it's a very simple repository. It has the Hacktoberfest tag there, topic. It doesn't have a contribute.md though, and we probably should have one. So this is an easy thing for me to contribute right now, right? So what I'm going to do is actually I'm going to take this URL and we're going to go ahead and do a pull request. I know it's not really fair because this is a repository that I'm very involved with. But we're going to come here and we're going to do this exact process from start to finish with this repository. So we're going to go ahead and paste this in and we're going to do this. And once again, I'm opening up my repository on GitHub inside VS Code. And what I want to do is create a new branch. So I'm going to come here, I'm going to go to branch, I'm going to create a branch, and I'm going to call this, I don't know, we'll just call this issue 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. Oh, there we go. Okay, perfect. And I'm going to create a new file. And I'm going to kind of take a shortcut. We're going to take the contributions file for another repository and just put it in there. So here's a contributing.md. And you can see this one, earn a free t-shirt. This is probably old. But what we're going to do is copy this. And I'm going to create a contributing.md in ours. So let's create a new file, contributing.md. And we're going to paste this in here. And I'm going to take away, yeah, I'm going to take that away because I don't think we're getting free t-shirts this year. Let's see. Welcome to Chrome. Actually, you know what? I got a great idea. Let's use that mass change feature. And we're going to do that. Chromebook setup. Okay. Arc53 is not who hosts this, so we're going to change that. There we go. These other links may not actually be correct, but that's okay. We'll slowly fix this. Actually, we can probably leave that. If you're looking to contribute to the backend, we don't have a backend. So we can probably just start doing this. And just take away stuff that doesn't make sense. So most of this stuff doesn't fit. This is a very simple. We don't have a Discord. And we don't have that. Okay, so we got rid of most of it. That's okay. So now this is our file, and I want to say, hey, please review this file and approve it if you like it. And unfortunately, I think I'm the person who's going to approve it, so that this isn't going to really work for my credit for Hacktoberfest, but it works from a technology process perspective. So I have the changes that I made. We can see them here. I want to add that to the list of things that I'm going to commit, which basically is a way of bundling up a change set, right? And I'm going to say added a file for contributing instructions. And I'm going to go ahead and commit and push. And I've just sent it to GitHub. In fact, we can go look at it. You can see, whoa, it's already there, right? I didn't even have to refresh. This is one of the great things about modern web stuff. So we can see our issues 1, 2, 3, 4 had recent pushes less than a minute ago. We can come here. Now, this would be what the owner of the project does. They come and they say, okay, well, what is going on here? What is the contribution? Well, right now we're going to create a pull request first, I guess, which is basically making the request. So I'm going to make this request saying, please accept my contribution. Ideally, someone else would review it. Let me go ahead and I'll select a couple people. who work here to maybe review it. Usually it's specified who's an assigned reviewer, right? I can't technically review my own work. That's not the way things work. But here, the reviewer will come in and see this pull request and say, oh, okay, I see what's going on here, all this stuff. And ideally, there would have been an issue ahead of time saying, hey, we actually do have an issue. Oh, look at that. There's an issue there. Let's go ahead and we'll retroactively say add a contributing.md file. And what I can also do is now say number 7 is the key thing there. So if I go back to this pull request, I can actually come in here and edit this and say closes number 7. And what's cool then is that when this gets approved, it'll automatically close that issue and make it go away. So you typically want to do something like that, saying it closes or fixes, something to that extent. There's a couple keywords that add this functionality to link the two. So ideally, one of my colleagues would come in here and approve it. I could just go and do it myself because I have that ability. This is my repository. So I'll go ahead and do it. And just to kind of show you the before and after. So on the left-hand side here in our code, we don't have contributing.md, right? It's not there. We're missing it. Yeah. We come here, it's part of this pull request, contributing.md. So when this pull request gets approved, again, I shouldn't be the one approving my own. GitHub's going to take the request that's approved, take the existing repository, add to it. And I'll go ahead and delete this branch. And now if we come back to here, contributing.md is there. So that's the life cycle of fixing an issue and then doing a pull request into the final repository. We did this very quickly, and it was a very simplistic example where we're just doing some text. But we could come in here and edit any of these files that same way and do a pull request. And again, it's up to the approver to actually approve it. You can't force that to go through. You could come up with the most amazing contribution in the world that like everyone should take advantage of. If the owner of the project doesn't want to approve it, it's not going to go in there. So it's not your fault, right? There's no harm that you can do other than taking up someone's time. And actually over the years, you'll see repositories on GitHub that get abandoned, and sometimes other people can take them over if the original owner lets them. And that's another benefit of open source software, is that things tend not to get abandoned as much because you can have multiple people contributing over the years. And so if it's valuable to somebody, let that person go and take over.
Yeah.
So I invite all of you to contribute to our Chromebook setup scripts, or come up with your own. You can fork it and also have your own if you want to. You could do a MacBook setup or a Windows machine setup, but a series of scripts that basically what this does is install all the software that we use. It saves a lot of time when you get a new computer or you wipe your computer and need to set it up again.
Yeah, very cool.
Yeah,
I was hoping that I'd be able to sneak in my own update to their contribution file and get rid of the free t-shirt and say, hey, they're not doing that this year. That's my contribution.
Feel free to make a contribution. So our README probably needs to be updated. It's 2 years old. You can see there's files here that are 5 years old. One of the things that we install on our Chromebooks is the data loader. And this is the Salesforce data loader, and it's really cool. It's a nice script to install it. But you'll notice that, like, okay, some stuff's commented out. Maybe it shouldn't be commented out. Maybe it should be. I don't know. You can see here there's a version number. Well, the latest version is not 54, so this script actually probably doesn't work anymore, which shows you how it's been a while since I set up a new Chromebook. So this needs to be fixed, right, to the latest version, which is probably 58. It wouldn't be hard for us to figure out. We can actually, let's see if we can find it. If we look for data loader on GitHub, we can see what the latest version is, and that needs to be fixed, right? So the latest version here is 59.0.0 actually. I'm a release behind, which tells you when we made this video. So you can come get that version number and do a pull request to our script. And the reality is we actually need to update that version number every time that we want to use a newer version.
So somebody like me could say, okay, let me go update the version number there and then create an issue that says somebody needs to write something so that when the version number changes in the future, this happens automatically, because I don't know how to do that.
That's a great issue. I'm going to go ahead and create the version, the issue right now to say update the version of the data loader to 59.0.0. I'll go ahead and put that in here, and for anyone to contribute, right? And for a label, what I'll do is I'll put good first issue, and maybe I'll even put Hacktoberfest in there too, even though it's, let's do the color. Can we get orange as the color? There we go, perfect. So normally you don't have to do it as the issue actually having it, but a great first issue and a great first issue for Hacktoberfest in my mind are two different things, because great first issue is usually what a new hire is going to work on, or somebody that's been trained a little more, let's say. Whereas with Hacktoberfest, we're basically saying, anybody in the world, please take this, right? So all we need is the current version of the data loader is 59.0.0. That is documented on their repo here. And I'll go ahead and put that in. Our version in our script is older and needs to be updated. So let me just go ahead and get that one more time. And I'll just put that in there. So it's good to provide as much information as possible. And so, yeah, if you get to this before we publish this video, then I apologize to everyone watching the video that you won't be able to make this change. But I'll see if I can find some other issues. And you can log issues too, anyone out there. If you spot something, I know our contributing.md could be better. I know our readme.md could be better. Maybe you know of some tools that are really cool that you think we should provide scripts for anyone that wants to use, and you want to add that in there. That'd be a great issue to add also. Yeah, I mean, this is something that I love this script. I used to use this multiple times a year. I obviously haven't used it lately, or at least not for the data loader. You can see that issue that was in here before was, wouldn't it be great if when I run the script, it presents you with a menu saying, hey, what do you want to install?
Yeah.
Because what I end up typically doing when I go to install is I run each one individually. So this is the script here, the main script, and you can see it runs all the other scripts. But sometimes I don't want to install the data loader. Sometimes I don't want to install Postman. In fact, I don't run it anymore. I use the web version. And so commenting out some of this stuff or providing a menu would make it a little easier for me. And a lot of these things, because I don't use it regularly, it's possible that the install script doesn't even work. I haven't worked on Polymer in a long time, so it may not work anymore. But I would love it if we had a menu, and then the person could just choose, okay, I want to install these different libraries or these different pieces of software. And I could run it again 2 months later if I change my mind and want something else, right? That would be great.
Time to start.
So those are all issues that I'll try to log by the time this is published. And that way we'll publish this early enough in October that people could contribute.
Yeah, very cool.
Yeah,
the idea of being able to pick reminds me of Ninite, which is like that site where you can, like, when I build a new Windows computer, and it's like, okay, I want Chrome, VLC, all of the apps. It's the
I don't have a Windows computer, so I don't know.
I figured, like, you might not be familiar with this, but this is what I do. And it's like, okay, give me Chrome, Zoom. Here's like the open source Microsoft Office equivalent, Dropbox, Google Drive.
Yeah, this is great. I don't know. So right now this particular script for the Chromebook sub, it runs as a bash script, which is in the terminal.
Yeah.
So it doesn't look pretty at all, right? It's very black and white. But this is amazing. This is a great look and feel. I don't know if we even need to go this far. I think just having, hey, click 1, 2, 3, 4, whatever you want or something would be enough.
And this puts out a little, like gives you a .exe that then runs you through the install of all of them on a Windows computer, which is nice.
Very cool. And it gets the latest versions, which is nice too. Years ago, I used to have a folder in our central file repository where we kept all the installers for all the tools that we used. But what would happen is it would get outdated almost immediately.
Yeah.
And it was this constant job to go in there and like, let me grab the latest installer for this, the latest installer for that. It was constant. And so something like this, that tool is much better because the end user doesn't have to worry, is it the latest? They know it is. I love that. I would love it if our script, was easier to use, and then it could be used by other people. I mean, you could also say the menu is asking, what are you trying to do? Are you an admin? Are you a developer? Are you an end user? Are you in marketing? And then based on that, it could say, oh, well, here's what we recommend, but feel free to go to advanced mode and choose whatever you want.
Yeah. You did remind me before we hop off, I saw on the Hacktoberfest participation section, I think it was, there was this lower non-code section and pointed at GitHub's README project. When I clicked on that was the exact same metaphor that I had at the top of the call, where it's like a movie. Everyone's got their little specialties, and they've got this great story about Sarah Rainsberger, who was a math teacher who was building a choir website and was using a tool that was fairly new, so it didn't have a lot of documentation. And then I think something that probably a lot of us have experienced with Salesforce, you don't know the most about something, but you know how to explain it well. And so then when new folks start coming into the space and asking questions, you're like, oh, I can be helpful here. And all of a sudden you're a valuable member of the community in terms of contributions and can lead to a whole new career path or. Yeah.
Well, and I think that's really the big similarity between Hacktoberfest or open source software and the Salesforce ecosystem is that huge community where we have a really diverse group of people who are all working towards similar stuff. And so that's what this is all about. It's such a good fit for what we do, but also what the bigger ecosystem does. Most open source projects, like I said at the beginning, are for good stuff. It's not, hey, this is an open source project on how to destroy everyone's microwave. Like it's not what it's about. It's about, building functionality that can help people or help you start a business, that does something. But it's all for the greater good, so to speak.
Yeah. And there's definitely a momentum that gets building there where, like you say, oh, I would love it if the installer was always up to date. The more people that are using the installer, the more frequently it's being checked, the more people are raising issues, and the more people there are to say, oh, I can update that version number, or, oh, I did see that there's a new version of this. Let me just go ahead and update it for everybody as opposed to just myself.
Right.
Versus when it's, just you making it, then it's always comes down to you to fix it. So
right. And it's not that we should do this with some type of ulterior motive, but often the people who contribute a lot will get mentioned in the READMEs or on the side of the repo, or in Easter eggs inside the software. And there are many people who have been noticed by large companies because of their contributions to various libraries and packages that then they end up getting a job. So there can be benefits down the line. It's not why people typically get into it, but it definitely doesn't hurt that there often are bonuses, so to speak, when you contribute a lot.
Yeah, and choose a GitHub handle that you're not embarrassed by. In case it does, in case you get to a point where you're like, man, I really should put that on my resume. I'm very embarrassed about the name I chose.
Yeah, I would recommend trying to choose something that will last for a long time and isn't too specific to what's in pop culture now or 20 years ago.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you very much, Matt, for walking us through that. Thank you, everybody, for watching. Happy Hacktoberfest. I do hope you'll join and contribute to our repository as well as others that you see there. I will not touch that issue that we created today, so some lucky viewer can go ahead and make that their first Hacktoberfest update. And as always, thank you, Matt, for walking us through that and explaining something that on its surface looks a little bit scary and technical, but making it very accessible and understandable. So thanks for joining and talking us through that.
Thanks. It was my pleasure. And I look forward to doing it again.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you everybody for watching. Do be sure to like and subscribe here, and we will be back next week with another video of the way things work and how we think through things here at MK Partners and in the world of Salesforce. Bye.